have finally returned, and so has Phlip Withem. After his 2-month retirement, that some people would just refer to as the off-season, we head into Season 4 with a budget that I think would have us on pace to compete with Ferrari's Formula One program. 83 million cash money dollars. Now that might sound like a lot, but I know plenty ways to spend it. To give you the quickest possible recap of Season 3, I won 33 of 36 races, wrecked Jeff Gordon again, big surprise there, barreled a bunch of people at Martinsville, and easily won my first Cup Series championship. But the most important moment of the season came in the fall Talladega race, where I share drafted Tony Walker up to a 7th place finish, securing him the 2005 Rookie of the Year award. Now on to 2006, I have a monumental goal. I want to win literally every race. If I can succeed at that, I will not only cruise to another championship, but most importantly, I will dethrone Jeff Gordon as the winningest active driver. The obvious hurdle here is Michigan, because I still need to make 2 stops in those races, but you know what? I'll cross that bridge when I burn it. As part of the off-season rituals, I signed an all-new crew. Hopefully I won't have to fire everyone mid-season. And after that, I realized I'll be running the exact same car that I won the championship with for the entirety of Speed Weeks. It literally sat untouched in the shop since Homestead November. And so I've been waiting a long time to say this. With a car rating of 77, we headed back to Daytona for Speed Weeks 2006. Just like last season, I'm employing my certified detune strategy in the Bud Shootout to get around my fuel mileage problems. Due to the random draw, I rolled off in 5th position for the Shootout, and I have to say, a car rating of 77 really makes this fuel strategy stuff way less painful. Down the backstretch, I got a run off Johnny Benson and made it 3 wide to take 2nd spot. Terry Labonte then went and smacked the wall off turn 4, and then I hooked up with Mark Martin and left the field behind in the first stint. Once again, the strategy with the gearing worked, and I made it all the way out to lap 6 before I pitted for the first time. My new pit crew did an incredible job with a pit time of 15.5, but we had a bit of a problem on the racetrack. You see, there were some real jokers who wanted to make it 7 laps on fuel, which is literally impossible. So they went ahead and ran out in turns 3 and 4. I noticed, but Mark Martin didn't, so he rammed Tony Stewart as hard as he possibly could, bringing out the caution. With that, I had the lead and had to make some tough choices on pit strategy. Since I knew there would be some debris cautions, I decided not to pit. And guess what? We made about a half a lap before Tony Stewart's back bumper flew off, and we were back under caution. I again decided not to pit, and this time we went back to green with just 3 laps to go. At this point, the entire field was in a terrible position on fuel, and I was confident that none of us could make it to the finish. So I made the decision that if we're all gonna run out, I'm gonna run out last. After just 1 lap, Dale Jarrett ran out, and I immediately started lifting. But I couldn't lift too much because Jeremy Mayfield was still under power behind me. But then, when we headed down into turn 1 on the final lap, Mayfield ran out of gas, and off turn 2, I ran out. We now had on our hands the world's slowest run back to the checkered flag, with the entire field out of gas. Just listen to the action.
This is the run to the finish!
Through the disturbing silence and gentle wind noise, I got to the line at a screaming 77 miles an hour to win the Budweiser Shootout of 2006. I really couldn't imagine a better way to start the season. And just like that, we were on to 500 week. Obviously, I reverted back to my regular gear ratios for the 500, and I qualified on the pole for the Great American Race by a little over a 1/10 above Tony Stewart. You'll notice a pretty common theme about Speed Weeks here. I spent the opening lap of my 125 getting Mark Martin up into the 2nd spot, and on lap 2, I drifted up the track, let him by, and once again, we drafted away from the field. Now, I'd be lying if I said this part of the race wasn't mind-numbing. I literally just sat behind him until the final lap, and then on the backstretch, I used the slingshot to fly by him and take the win. And with that, it was finally time for the 2006 Daytona 500. Right as we took the green, I was already trying to find a way to get back with my wingman Mark Martin. Through turns 3 and 4, Dale Jr. got a run up on the outside that I had to cover. Martin followed through on the bottom to take 2nd. I got my 5 bonus points for leading the opening lap, and I let Mark pass me through 1 and 2 and was right back where I wanted to be. This should come as no surprise at this point, but I ran right behind Mark Martin up until the first cycle of pit stops, and after the cycle concluded, I realized I had created a bit of a monster. Mark had a 2-second lead on me and was pulling away by himself. I immediately realized I had to drop behind Dale Jarrett and try to draft my way back up to Mark Martin before he got with some lap car or something and just became unstoppable. This strategy worked insanely well, and we caught up to him in just 2 laps. I made the move on Dale Jarrett in a much more aggressive fashion than I was planning, and then I went and passed Mark Martin just to make sure that I still could. I let him by on the next lap though so we could get back to tandeming. Not too long after that, we caught up to my favorite lap car, Christian Fittipaldi, and in that moment, I decided to instead work with all the lap cars I found because they don't pose any threat to me and my chances of winning. I came in for my final stop on lap 42 and took right sides only because I wanted as much track position as I could possibly get. I cycled back to the lead on lap 46 and proceeded to become best friends with Terry Labonte for some reason. In the closing laps, I had a nice little lap car moment with Steve Park and finally had the opportunity to patch things up with his teammate Robbie Gordon. But in the end, I managed to cruise the thing home to take my second Daytona 500 victory. This time it was by 10 seconds. Just this race alone made for a $5.4 million payday. That is nice. Mark Martin led the most laps and finished second, so we actually leave Daytona tied atop the point list with 180 points each. Then it was time for Rockingham, the first downforce race of the season, and I put down a real flyer in qualifying and took the pole spot with a 22.75, yet again beating out Tony Stewart for it. Also, I almost had that glitch where everybody starts wrecking during the pace laps, but unfortunately I skipped it. I'm still kicking myself over that, and after that shocking disappointment, the race began. Coming off turn 4 on the first lap, Tony Stewart got a little too far up the racetrack and bounced off the wall down to Ryan Newman. From that point, I realized that my car was somehow faster in the race than it was in qualifying, so I left Dale Jr. and the rest of the field in my dust. While working my way through lap traffic, I had a bit of a revelation. It's actually more important to be strong allies with lap cars than anyone towards the front of the field. I mean, after all, the slowest cars are in fact the ones who end up passing the most. Also, shout out to Tony Walker making his first start of the season. Considering this is Rockingham, I couldn't actually do anything to help him. But take a look at the back of his car. See those rookie stripes? I helped him win the Rookie of the Year honors last season, but he only made 2 starts. That's less than the 7-race cap on rookie eligibility. That means he is eligible to contend for consecutive Rookie of the Year awards. Overall, this race was extremely calm. There was one moment, though, with Jeremy Mayfield. I had no idea he was coming to pit road, and I tried passing him down on the bottom, and he ended up slamming me no less than 3 times, and was still upset after it. By lap 80, I officially put the entire field a lap down. I then took the time to make sure that me and Tony Walker were back to being plus 100 allies. Literally nothing else happened in this race, and I easily picked up my second win of the season. And with that, I've officially taken over the points lead, now above the Season 1 champion, Dale Earnhardt Jr. Keep an eye on Tony Walker in the rookie points, by the way. He currently sits in 3rd. My message to the field, watch out. The next race was the first 1.5 mile race of the season at Las Vegas. This shouldn't come as any surprise, but I won another pole. What was surprising, though, was the outside pole sitter, Kenny Wallace. On the start, Kenny Wallace wasted no time trying to get to the tail end of the field. Literally, he just went straight to the top of the track like he was already 1 lap down. My car was bad fast here, too. I was just riding along in my automobile, and everything was close to completely fine until we got to the final cycle of pit stops. There was some cars that were running long, hoping for a caution. One of those cars was Sterling Marlin. So I tried getting out of Sterling's mirrors running turns 3 and 4 down on the apron, and when he started making his entry to pit road, I just ram-dumped him. Sterling backed it up into the wall. He got hit by Jeff Burton, and then Stanton Barrett and David Green just piled in for sport because they were like 6 seconds behind this when it all started. By dumping Sterling, I actually assumed the lead, but under the caution, I decided to pit and get the damage repaired. I restarted in 13th spot with just 8 laps to get the job done. I went and pinned the thing right down to the bottom and made quick work of most of them. When I got up to 5th, I looked up and noticed that Sterling hadn't even pitted yet. I immediately said to myself, well, there's the race-ending debris caution. But right after I thought that, he pitted. I wasn't taking any chances, though. I got by Dale Jr. on the front stretch, and then it was down to just me and Tony Stewart. I went for the slide job down to turn 3, but got just a little too far up the track, and he crossed me over to take it back as we got onto the front stretch. But the next time by, I faked him up to the top into turn 1, got it pointed down low, and blew his doors off. Just 1 lap later, the caution flag fell. Take a guess who dropped debris? Sterling Marlin. Now sure, he pitted, but I'm pretty confident it was for fuel only. The race ended under caution, and I picked up the win. Then we headed back to the ultra-fast Atlanta Motor Speedway, the home race of 90% of my sponsors. With a 28.89, I picked up another easy pole position. And when you're that good qualifying on a race setup, you're even better in the race. After about 5 laps, Dale Jarrett was already a minuscule dot in my rearview mirror. This car never trended loose. It was just stuck to the track all the way through. Frankly, it was glorious. On lap 40, I ran up on Sterling Marlin again. And this time, I guess he was watching his mirrors so closely that he forgot that there's some bends in the front stretch. He just wandered up into the outside wall, and I managed to pull off a pass in the grass in the process. Also got to have another run-in with Mayfield. He blocked me down onto the apron, so I sent it up the inside, just like he was asking me to, and he got upset again about how I used his car to turn. Oh, and check out this lap car moment. This is another example of the perks of being friends with the back of the field. Terry Labonte was trying to get out of my way, and in the process checked up a bunch of cars, leading to this unnecessary but awesome 4-wide moment. This race was a total washout, and I won it by a lap and a half. Despite the fact that I've won every race so far, Dale Jr. is only 80 points back from me. In fact, his average finish right now is 3.7. I'd usually call that superhuman, but I'm setting a bit of a different standard. Anyways, the next race is at one of the finest tracks on the schedule, Darlington. And if you can't already tell, me winning poles by ridiculous margins is going to be a bit of a theme this season. Hermie Sadler qualified 8th. Literally the fastest Pontiac in the field. What is happening with that car? And once the race started, Michael Waltrip went up and took 2nd and fought extremely hard to keep it. He was checking up the field so bad that they actually started to form a pack up behind him. He finally got kicked up to the outside line on lap 15, but his shenanigans pretty much gifted me a 6.8 second lead above Dale Jarrett. It was smooth sailing from there. Lap cars were a bit of a handful on old tires, but I really don't know how good your car would have to be at Darlington for that to not be a problem. Later on in the race, when I was going to be headed to pit road for my final pit stop, I finally got a taste of my own medicine. Bobby Labonte and Ryan Newman were right behind me on fresh tires, and when I started slowing down, I managed to block them in such a way that they actually didn't try passing me, and when I turned down to actually come to pit road, Newman's nose was there, so I spun myself out, going 50 miles an hour. But hey, I got a caution, and I took that opportunity to make my final pit stop under yellow. Because I didn't have any damage from spinning around at highway speeds, I kept the lead off pit road. From that point, I got back down to the bottom, made my way around all the lap cars that restarted up in front of me, and left the field in the dust without even needing Michael Waltrip's help. I might not have lapped the whole field this time, but I still won by over 7 seconds, and really that should be enough to be satisfied. Oh, and apparently the world partially ended on lap 27, and just no one told me. 4 cars DNF'd in 1 lap. I mean, that sounds like it would be pretty obvious, but from my perspective, absolutely nothing happened, so I guess they wrecked on pit road. Your guess is as good as mine. Then we set off for the first real meat grinder of the season, Bristol. I pulled off a lap in practice that absolutely destroyed Ryan Newman's track record, and while I was a little bit slower in qualifying, I still broke the track record and sat on yet another pole. By the time the race started, I was not the only super fast car though. On lap 2, Mark Martin took 2nd spot off the Robert Yates teammates of Dale Jarrett and Elliott Sadler, and he hung out about 3/10 behind me for the next 12 laps until I caught up with lap traffic. To keep that margin stable, he was pretty much matching my track record lap times. I eventually confused Mark Martin with some lap cars, and then spent the rest of the first stint on just traffic management. Every time you go to Bristol in this game, there's always the concern of catching a mystery caution at the wrong time and getting trapped about 2 laps down. Despite that threat, I made the high-honor decision to not cause a preemptive strategy caution. During my stop, the pit crew made their first colossal mistake of the year, and when I was exiting the pit stall, Fittipaldi and Mayfield got into a battle on pit road. And somehow, after all that, the cycle went on without issue. I was back in the lead. After another 30-something laps of traffic management, it was time for my final pit stop. This time around, I got even luckier. I saw Ward Burton hit pit road, and I thought to myself, well, this could probably get pretty interesting. And it did. I ran long, and he gifted me a mystery caution. I pitted under his caution and kept the lead off pit road. I quickly made my way down to the bottom on the restart, dealt with even more lapped cars, fenced Kenny Wallace, and brought home yet another trophy. But I think what surprised me the most after this race was how my car barely had a scratch on it. It looked like I could go run Texas with it. And so I did. Texas has always been one of my best tracks, so I just completely destroyed the field. In fact, I was so fast that I almost destroyed myself. When you're ridiculously overpowered, you can run up on lap cars so quick that they really don't know what to do. This obviously creates problems. I had like a 10+ mile an hour run on Don Evans coming off turn 4, and for some reason he tried to cover it, and I accidentally right hooked him. I spun out and got rammed by Jeff Gordon, of all people. Fortunately, that impact actually got me across the start-finish line to take the caution before things got any worse than they already were. But now Jeffrey is upset with me again, and I have to deal with him. I pitted under the caution to get as much damage repaired as I could, and I restarted in 4th, right behind Jeff. On the restart, I passed him so fast that he couldn't even do anything about me, and in the same move, I got by Johnson. And through turns 3 and 4, I got the lead back from Ryan Newman. That crash had no impact on this race car. It was still on a rail. A few laps later, Jeff Gordon caused a debris caution, and I took the opportunity right there to make my final pit stop. I got off pit road with the lead and had clear track up in front of me. I pretty much just rode around for the final stint because I didn't want to, wreck with any more lap cars, and I still ended up winning the race by almost 19 seconds. Then it was time for Talladega. From this point forward, I'll just tell you when I don't win the pole. That seems like a more informative stat anyway. It was reported leading up to Talladega that Phlip Withem had a nightmare where he had witnessed Wally Dallenbach ending Jeff Gordon's career just to win a race at Atlanta. And after that, he had began to think about the consequences of a rivalry taken too far. This race was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reset relations with Jeff Gordon. And so, I spent the first few laps just playing the lanes trying to get Jeff up into a position that I actually could work with him. He finally got up to 2nd on lap 6, and I dropped in line behind him so that we could share draft away from the field. Within a few laps, I had him as a plus 100 ally. Never thought I'd see that. I had to pit before Jeff did, and after the stop, I got jump scared by Mayfield. The cycle worked out in just such a way that I was able to pick up Gordon again as my drafting partner. I worked with him until lap 18 when we had a caution. Yet another accidental lapaging. Bobby Labonte was exiting pit road and drifted a little too high off the apron and got himself destroyed by the 142 car. This created another vehicular explosion that was so violent that the game really didn't even know what to do with itself. For sport, I decided to pit, and I was the only car that did that, so I restarted in 40th. We made exactly 2 laps before Jack Sprague dropped debris on the track, and I got up to 30th before taking the caution. To be even more sporting, I pitted again. At this point, I started passing cars in chunks, and I nearly wrecked it when cars started pitting, but I got through enough traffic to hook up with Dale Jarrett and start running down the leaders. I was working pretty well with him until he got confused by lap cars and I just ran right into him. So then I started island hopping with lap cars and eventually made my way back to Jeff Gordon's bumper. And I stayed there until he also got confused by lap cars and I was forced to pass him. The very same lap, the leaders pitted and I cycled back into the top spot. And on lap 39, I made my way down pit road for my final stop, took right sides only, and got off with the lead. I rode around for the last 8 laps by myself and won by over 9 seconds. Couldn't even imagine how a Talladega crowd would react to something like that. And then we arrived at the dreaded Martinsville Speedway.
The 121 car is becoming an excellent friend on the track with Jeff Gordon.
Yeah, but it's far from over yet.
I can't believe I'm going to say this about a car I had at Martinsville. This thing was awesome. I wasn't, leaving the field behind, but I put about a second on Jeff Gordon before we started getting into lap traffic. And I made sure to make the lap car moments as efficient as possible so I could really start putting time on the field. My lead peaked at about 2.1 seconds above the new second place runner Dale Jr. until my tires melted and he closed right up to me. I ran this stint long, hoping to catch a mystery caution, and Jeff Gordon delivered it to me. Maybe this is a real friendship. I pitted under the caution. When I left my stall, I got brake checked by Kenny Wallace, and we had some cars stay out, so I restarted in 6th position. I dive bombed into turn 1, rammed Jeff Gordon. When I left turn 2, I was already up in 4th. The next lap, I got by Mark Martin and found myself in 3rd behind Jamie McMurray and Kurt Busch. I got by McMurray pretty easily, but I just absolutely could not catch Kurt. He actually had to pit for me to get the lead back. But then, on lap 57, Christian Fittipaldi got jealous of Jeff Gordon and brought out the caution by doing absolutely nothing. He actually did it right up in front of me, and it distracted me enough that I almost took out the outside wall. I pitted under caution, cycled out in 13th, and I spent most of this restart just diving into turn 3 every lap, trying to steal as many spots as I possibly could. And thanks to the tire advantage, I eventually got back into the lead. Expecting another mystery caution, I ran this stint out long too, but shockingly, we didn't get one. I headed down pit road for my final stop on lap number 97. I left pit road in 3rd behind the Roush teammates of Kurt Busch and Mark Martin. Fortunately, I had a huge tire advantage, so I muscled my way through Kurt, then just flew by Mark Martin to take the lead back. Mark and Kurt then immediately ducked onto pit road for their final stop, but just a few laps later, Fittipaldi did the thing again, and we were back under caution. I can assure you, I was not dumb enough to pit this late in the race, so I stayed out, gave Kurt a lap back so I could get down to the bottom, cleared Dale Jr. off turn 2, and frankly the race was over from there. I only won by 2 seconds, which I'm gonna say this season counts as a photo finish. And not a single car got put in the sand barrels. Kind of disgusts me to think about. And the next race was at the old California Speedway. Somewhat surprisingly, the first stint of this race had some action. My car was terrible getting through the gears on the start, so by turn 2 I'd actually fallen back to 4th. Once I got it up to full song though, it was pretty good. I got by Junior into turn 3, used a slingshot to pass Mark Martin on the front stretch. Using that momentum, I got right up beside Tony Stewart, but couldn't get him cleared. I tried him again down to turn 3, dove in on the bottom, slid up right in front of him, and got the top spot. For the rest of the stint, I very slowly started gapping the field, and then finally, once the tires got wore out, I really started putting some time on them. And then the race got really strung out. In fact, the only real highlights were my pit crew screwing up again. I kinda just won. It still bothers me, though, that I can see victory lane here, but they won't let me in. I even tried the back door, and it's sealed off too. So then it was time for the action track, Richmond. The track did not live up to its nickname. My car was just stupid fast. In the first stint alone, I put 14 seconds on Jeff Gordon in second place. And in the second stint, I put the whole field a lap down with a 4-wide move on Gordon that I really just did for style points. At the end of the race, I had every car up to 4th, 2 laps down. It was no contest, and I think I might have cost Richmond at least one date on next year's schedule. Just like that, it was time for the Winston. With $109 million in the bank, I don't necessarily need another million. I'd certainly like it. Because of the random draw, I started the race from 3rd, which is in many ways the catbird seat. In true Winston fashion, I made it 3 wide down to turn 1 for the fun of it, got by Jamie McMurray, ran it onto the apron down the backstretch trying to get side by side with Bobby Labonte, slid up on him into turn 3, and had the lead. I then made my mandatory segment 1 pit stop at the end of lap 5. I easily cycled back into the lead on lap 9 and picked up the segment 1 win. Segment 2 is just a 7-lap run, and since I started from first, I made pretty quick work of it too. Because of the inversion though in the final segment, I started from 6th position. Kinda surprised they didn't invert the whole top 10 this time, that's usually what happens. Right as we took the green, I doored my way through Bobby Labonte so I could get down to the bottom, and then I got a huge run down the backstretch on both Jeff Gordon and Mark Martin. I tried making it 3 wide into turn 3, clipped the apron and got up into Jeff, which damaged our enduring friendship, but it did give me the spot. I then got by Mark Martin into turn 1, and down the backstretch, used Ryan Newman's slipstream, past Tony Stewart on the outside. Coming into turn 3, I put the $1 million move on Ryan Newman, and it was smooth sailing from there. I won yet another Winston, and claimed a very nice paycheck. Now the next race, it featured plenty sponsorship pressure. I drive the Coca-Cola car, and we're headed into the Coca-Cola 600. My car was just as good here as it was at Texas. I just needed to make sure not to run into any lap cars this time. I was still making some passes a little fancier than they needed to be, but you gotta entertain yourself somehow. On lap 49, I ran up on Tony Stewart so fast that he panicked and threw himself into the outside wall. On lap 79, I passed Dale Earnhardt Jr. and once again put the whole field down a lap. The Coca-Cola Ford was hooked up all night long, and in the end, I picked up my 60th career NASCAR still Winston Cup Series win in the Coca-Cola 600. That puts me just 4 wins behind the winningest active driver Jeff Gordon, and something tells me our little friendship isn't gonna last. The road to 64 wins brings us to Dover, and just like Charlotte, I've still got the field destroyed on raw pace. My biggest challenge is catching lap cars at the wrong time. That shouldn't surprise you. But this race overall was calm, comfortable, and I might even call it sleepy. This may come as a shock, but I won again. For some reason, I had the hope that Pocono, of all places, could bail me out of this monotony, and on the start, it sure looked like things might get interesting. This was another track where I was terrible getting through the gears, so as we made our way down to turn 1, I had already dropped back to 5th. But the moment we got onto the long pond straight, the afterburner kicked in, and I made it nearly 4 wide going for the lead into the tunnel turn. Everyone but me lifted early, which was a wise decision for everybody's safety, and once we got into the corner, I slid up, made a little bit of contact with Jarrett, that left the bottom open, so I doored Newman, and then slid back up into Jarrett, and with that, I had the lead. They weren't even done making contact behind me. It was lap 18 before I saw another race car, and that was just because I made my first pit stop before anyone else. Eventually, though, I had some lap cars to race with. Oh, and in case you were worried, I made sure to keep my friendship with David Green and Hermie Sadler at a plus 100 status. Casey Mears tried blocking me down to turn 1 while I was literally going 213 miles an hour, so I went up to the outside, and he tried blocking me again, but this time I got beside him. I voiced my displeasure down the long pond straight by slowly drifting lower and lower down the track, but then I noticed, up ahead of us, a red speck billowing smoke. Dale Earnhardt Jr. blew up. Huge for the points situation, but not the most important thing going on in that moment. I wanted to see if Mears would back off and miss him. Surprisingly, he did. But unfortunately, Hermie Sadler did not, and plowed right into Junior, bringing out the caution. I got Mears lapped as we were racing back to the caution, and I took the opportunity to pit, knowing that we'd be good to make it to the end from there. I then experienced probably one of the most boring final stints at any track ever. Just to be extra careful, I did start saving fuel, but even with that, I still won by 7 seconds. Dale Jr., after his last place finish, dropped to 3rd in points, 70 markers behind Tony Stewart, who is a ridiculous 398 points behind me. The next race was probably the field's best chance to make some points back, Michigan. Did you notice that I haven't used a single strategy caution yet this season? Well, I had been saving them up for a reason. I crunched the numbers. If a well-timed caution came out on exactly lap 12, that would put me in a very desirable strategy position. So in the opening laps, I stepped on it and tried to get as big of a lead as I could before pulling the ultimate spin gate maneuver. With a 6-second lead, I got myself in position and drunkenly started swatting flies as we came off turn 4, eventually spinning it and tagging the inside wall. I got the caution flag I wanted, grabbed a gear, and got back to the start-finish line barely with the lead. In fact, looking at it frame by frame, I'm not really sure who led the lap. But either way, I thought I had it made. Was I a little bit worried about the caution replay saying I was in 10th? Sure. But I thought that probably doesn't matter. I made my way down pit road, thinking I'd eliminated the AI's advantage. But the moment I left pit road, I noticed I had a pretty serious problem. 3/4 of the field is now somehow a lap down, and I'm one of them. So now we have the AI cars cheating on fuel economy, me cheating with planned cautions, and the officials cheating with scoring. If everyone's cheating all at once, we can assume that the final outcome is fair. With that, I started muscling my way through the field, and in just a few laps, I got up to 15th, which made me the first car 1 lap down. I used up Jeff Gordon a little bit, and then tried to see if I could wreck Bobby Labonte for a caution, but he wouldn't budge. Once pit stop started, I knew exactly what I had to do. I ran very, very long during this stint, took the lead back, and began planning my second miraculous strategy caution. I looked up in the rearview mirror and saw none other than Jeff Gordon. So I thought I might as well give the media a field day and make it look like he wrecked me. I let him have a look inside through turns 3 and 4, then I chopped his nose, spinning myself out. Sounded like a great plan, but this is where things got out of hand. Phlip finally earned his name, stuck the landing, and became rivals with half the field immediately. If you think it was over, just watch.
Got one outside. All right, now get hungry. We need to eat up this 10-second gap to the leader.
I am still speechless, but I didn't really have time to think about what I had just done, so I hit pit road to get some of my damage repaired, and somehow the car still ran. The second strategy caution paid off. I restarted in 10th, the last car on the lead lap. I checked up into turn 1 because I was afraid of making contact with anyone. I was pretty confident the engine would just explode if I did, and I ended up profiting from that weak entry because Dale Jarrett dropped debris and I missed it. On the restart, we made it about 9 seconds under green before Jimmy Johnson also dropped debris, and I really went for it on that lap. I got by Nadeau, Johnson, Jarrett, and Marlin all down the backstretch, and I beat Ryan Newman back to the flag to take 5th. At that point, my confidence in the car was officially back to 100%, and it was time to go for the win. I got by Mikey with a bit of a slide job in turn 3. Terry Labonte chose to help me and forced both Dale Jr. and his own teammate, Jeff Gordon, to check up just a little bit, allowing me to slip by and take second. Then I threw it down into turn 1. Tony Stewart tried blocking me. I wasn't having that, and I put the bumper to him, moved him up the track, completely used him up off turn 2, and took the lead back. Somehow, this twice-flipped car still had a lot more to give me, and I started driving away from the field. I don't think I've ever been more proud of a race car in my entire life, because it held together, and I spun the thing across the line to finally get my first career win at Michigan. It only took 4 seasons. The next race was Sonoma. Because I blew turn 2, Tony Stewart had a pretty good shot at me in the opening lap, and things got a little bit physical. But after nearly taking out the wall in turn 4A, I had the lead. It was immediately game over for the field. Halfway through the first stint, I realized I was burning a little bit too much fuel to make my one-stop strategy work without cautions, so I went and stopped shifting as much and also started lifting earlier. I made it out to the end of lap 14 before I made my one and only pit stop. Oh, and Bobby Labonte was still really upset after Michigan, and he became a little bit of a problem when I went to lap him. On the opposite end of the spectrum, his brother Terry, still extremely nice. My one-stop strategy paid off big time. In fact, I was the only car that made it on one stop, so on the last lap, I passed Dale Jr. and put the whole field a lap down on a road course. I cruised it around for the rest of the lap and claimed my 64th career Winston Cup Series win. In very stupid fashion, I might add. Me and Jeff are now tied for wins heading into the Pepsi 400 at Daytona. I'd like to remind you that I drive the Coca-Cola Ford, and he drives the Pepsi Chevrolet. The Cola Wars are about to come to a head. You know the deal for the plate tracks. I shot away on the start to pick up 5 points for leading a lap. Then in turn 1, I drifted up the track to give Kevin Harvick the lead and started share drafting him. Kevin was doing a great job of keeping his car down on the bottom, but once the tires wore out, he started running up by the wall. And this was a problem for me, because I needed more than just one lane to get this car to corner on old tires. So by entering the corners up by the wall, I had no wiggle room, and I got up into the outside wall and lost Kevin's draft. So to stop the bleeding, I hit pit road that lap for my first stop of the night. That ended up being a pretty efficient strategy move, and I cycled out about 1.5 seconds behind Kevin. Just like in the Daytona 500, I picked up Dale Jarrett as my second partner of choice. It only took us a lap to catch Harvick, and DJ tried to make the move to the inside for the lead, but for some reason he checked up in the tri-oval and I had to bail on him before I ended up wrecking everyone. I was still determined though to help DJ lead this race as a token of thanks, so I passed Dale into turn 1, pulled the slingshot move on the backstretch on Harvick, and I made a little bit of contact with him just to check him up, and then I made the exchange with Dale Jarrett through turns 1 and 2 and got back to share drafting. I bailed on Jarrett because I had every intention of running this stint long, so I started once again working with any fast lap car I could find. I ended up working with Sterling Marlin long enough to get him pretty far into Allied territory, which I suppose was my apology for Las Vegas. And eventually, I found my way back to my old buddy Mark Martin and glued my car to his back bumper for the rest of the stint. I made my final pit stop at the end of lap 30, took right sides only, had this near-disaster moment with lap cars, and then cycled out with a very sizable lead. I started share drafting with even more back marker cars to make sure that everybody back there just absolutely loves me. And in the end, I continued my streak of completely ruining plate races by taking the win in the Pepsi 400 by 12 seconds above Sterling Marlin. That's career win number 65. Took just 4 seasons to become the winningest active NASCAR Winston Cup Series driver. Couldn't be more proud of the team though. I mean, I haven't even had to fire anyone this season. Oh, and a quick message to Jeff Gordon. Coke wins. And now we embark on the second half of the 2006 season, beginning with Chicagoland Speedway. This is another race where my car was terrible getting through the gears, so Dale Earnhardt Jr. got by me into turn 1. I had to share draft him down the backstretch to use his momentum to get position on him and pull a slide job on him into turn 3 to take command of the race. Literally nothing interesting happened for the next 20 laps, but then I noticed that someone very important made this race. Tony Walker. I'm going to do everything in my power to help him win that second Rookie of the Year award, so I started share drafting with him. I ran this stint long and helped him pass Ashton Lewis, Casey Mears, Kyle Petty, Jack Sprague, and Ray Parker. That there is what effective teamwork looks like. Later on, I accidentally fenced Jeff Gordon. On lap 59, I had the field a whole lap down again. Imagine the ratings at this point in the season. And you know, this is 2006, so there's a new TV deal coming in for next year. To be a fly on the wall for those negotiations. And yeah, I won again. That's not what matters. What matters is that Tony Walker finished in 29th. And that brings him up to 6th overall in the very stacked field of rookie contenders. Then we headed for New Hampshire, and this was another overall calm race. I will say that I really didn't have the field beat on pace. I mean, at the end of the first stint, I'd only put about a second and a half on Dale Jr., but where I had them beat was on strategy and traffic management. And it's not like my strategy here is a galaxy brain level move. It's the same thing I do every time we come here. I just pit on laps 25 and 50, splitting this thing into 3 25-lap stints. But the AI cars love running long, and that makes my strategy work. Because this field doesn't seem to know anything about lap times, pit strategy, or how those two things correlate, I ended up winning by 12.6 seconds. Then we made the return trip to Pocono. Once again, the moment I hit 4th gear, the car bogged down like it was stuck in mud, and I dropped back to 3rd on my way to turn 1. I got it wound up down the Long Pond Straight by share drafting with Tony Stewart, and I took him and Kurt Busch 3 wide into the tunnel turn. As usual, I was the last to lift, and I slid through the grass a little bit and made it out safely with the lead. Pocono didn't get any smaller from the last time we raced here, so I spent the vast majority of this race running by myself. After the field cycled through for the final time, I had everyone up to 4th a lap down, and I held on for the next 2 laps to take the win by a tiny 41 seconds above Dale Earnhardt Jr. The next race was at a place that has accidentally become my absolute favorite track on the schedule. We're headed to the famed Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the Brickyard 400. Oh, and may I add that in this timeline, I'm actually tied with Jeff Gordon for wins here. Fittingly, we started the race side by side. I cleared him down to turn 1, and then I went and reminded the field how I won the last 3 races here. In the first stint alone, I put 15 seconds on Tony Stewart. My car was the fastest car I have ever driven anywhere in this career mode. I hit 221 thanks to Hermie Sadler. That's the absolute limit of the stolen, rented Ford Cosworth engines. I took my 4th career Brickyard 400 win by, again, 41 seconds above Dale Jr. The same exact result as Pocono. And well, exactly 4 years after I claimed my first career win, I picked up win number 69. Then it was time for Watkins Glen, the final road course on the schedule, and the only other track that I can go for a perfect record at. At the start, the RCR teammates of Robbie Gordon and Steve Park beat me down into turn 1, but I got them back as we headed up through the S's. And when I got Robbie cleared, he lost the nose, and if he didn't hit the Armco, he came as close as you could possibly get. After I made my way through the bus stop, we got a caution, and somehow I wasn't the cause. Kurt Busch pretty much just dumped Kevin Harvick. I have no idea what's going on between those two, but they better have a camera on them when this race is over. Under the caution, I chose to stay out, and knowing that I'd have to go weak into turn 1, I entered way down low to get out of everybody's way, and Robbie Gordon still ran me. So in that instant, I said screw it, throttled up, ran Stewart off the track, and once again, had the lead. Later on, I had the ultimate deja vu moment going up through the S's. Right up in front of me, the 101 car of Clay Dixon blew up, and he got rammed by Stanton Barrett. I managed to get my car woed up just in time to miss him, and just like that, we have our second caution of the day. I pitted under the yellow, and I restarted in 6th behind all the cars that were just lucky enough to pit before that crash happened. Turn 1 continued being problematic. I lost a spot to Tony Stewart, but Terry Labonte did me yet another solid and slowed up so I could pass both him and Tony. I got by Marlin as we exited the S's and went off-roading through the bus stop past his teammate Jamie McMurray. Before that lap was even over, I got around both Bobby Labonte and Mark Martin and took control of the race once more. I pretty much just rode around for the next 3 laps until we had another caution. This time, it was for the outside pole sitter, Robbie Gordon. He ran it wide in the bus stop, got clipped by Matt Kenseth, and just went straight into the wall. Immediately burst into flames, but then Kenny Wallace and Jeff Burton piled in. Burton ended up flipping, and Kevin Harvick almost went over as well. The cleanup was so severe that the race did not get back going, and I took the win under caution to cap off this very sloppy running of the Sirius at the Glen. And already, it was time to return to Michigan. Just to see if I could replicate that scoring glitch, I decided to employ the exact same strategy for this race as I did in the first Michigan race. So I ran as hard as possible in the opening laps and built up a 6.8 second advantage shortly before totally accidentally losing complete control of the car off turn 4. This time, I took the outside wall instead of spinning it down low, and somehow that was a better tactic. This time, the pace car picked me up as the leader. I pitted under the caution, and now I had properly eliminated the AI car's fuel advantage. I restarted in 42nd, and let me tell you, I was picking them up and putting them down. In fact, by lap 19, I was already battling for spots inside the top 10. I made a 3-wide move on the apron to get into the top 5, and then completely blew by Kevin Harvick and Ryan Newman. Then I charged turn 3 a little bit too hard and got up into Jeff Gordon. And for old time's sake, I doored him coming back down the track, and he repaid the favor just a few seconds later. Once we got done reminiscing, I set my sights on Dale Jr. My car was so fast that I actually caught him by surprise, and I passed him up on the outside on the backstretch. Once I made my one and only green flag pit stop, I had a 2.5-second lead on Dale Jr. I just drove away from there. I ultimately extended my lead all the way out to 14 seconds before wrecking it across the line to take my second win at Michigan. Then we went back to Bristol, this time for the night race, and at first it looked like it was going to be an exact mirror of the spring race. I took off to an early lead, Mark Martin fell in line in second, and frankly everything was cool. The only thing that felt different was that the race pace was actually even faster. I made my way to pit road for the first time on lap 43. Once I rejoined the track, I got to racing with the lap car of Casey Mears, and since I didn't learn anything from Pocono, I thought that he was going to, back off and let me in line. He didn't give, and I clipped his front bumper, and instead of spinning out, I just pounded the outside wall. Somehow that wasn't the most important thing going on in that moment. Make note of Mark Martin down there coming to pit road. He was the leader, so by passing him, I got back on the lead lap. And seconds later, Ward Burton brought out another mystery caution. I did not pit under the caution, and I restarted in 7th, kinda sorta at the tail end of the lead lap. The race leader, Ryan Newman, actually restarted with the whole field in front of him. So I took the green already 10 seconds back. Anyways, I pinned it down to the bottom and made it up to 4th before having this major disagreement with Kurt Busch. I slipped by to take 3rd, and I left him to deal with his frustrations alone. I spent the next few laps chasing down Jeff Gordon, and on lap 60, I moved him up the track in 1 and 2 and finished the job to take 2nd. So now I had to make up more than 6 seconds on Ryan Newman. He got so bogged down by lap cars that I actually did close to just 9/10 back from him before I absolutely had to pit. Here was where my decision-making got a little bit clouded. I chose not to repair my damage because I didn't want to lose any more time to the 12 car. After I'd made my pit stop, I was riding around just fine in 4th, 1 lap down, and then I caused a debris caution. In an effort to save a couple tenths, I trapped myself a lap down. Fortunately, I'm crafty enough to get out of situations like this. I was once again gonna employ strategy cautions. I got clear of Jimmy Johnson in turn 1, and I was hoping to get Jeff Gordon to spin me out again, but I just screwed the whole thing up. I got into turn 3 too hard, hit the wall, bounced off Gordon, tried to salvage it by spinning across Johnson, but that also backfired terribly. I got across the line in 7th, still a lap down. By the way, that caution got Jeff Gordon back on the lead lap, so, he can't say I never did anything for him. I called that restart a mulligan, stayed out, and went for it again. I got through Johnson into turn 3, barreled past Harvick to get back on the lead lap, and did the same thing against Bobby Labonte as a bit of an insurance policy. The next lap, I lost control off turn 4 in just such a way that I caused a caution, passed the start-finish line ahead of the leader to get back on the lead lap, and then the AI took control of my car about 4 frames before I hit the wall, so the game didn't count that as damage. But as an unintended consequence of my actions, Johnny Benson flipped massively. I pitted under that caution, and it took so long to repair my damage that I almost lost the lap that I fought so hard to get back. But finally, I was restarting in 7th on the lead lap. I got by my rival Bobby Labonte with no issue for some reason, and then barreled through both Robbie Gordon and Matt Kenseth. I faked Ryan Newman out to take 3rd, and in the process put the bumper to Jeff Gordon again. I doored my way through him into turn 1, and then it was just between me, Kevin Harvick, and lap traffic. Stanton Barrett chose to make things very interesting. He was on fresh tires, and he just randomly decided to start racing the leader, Kevin Harvick. I saw my opportunity down to turn 1 and bumped Barrett into Harvick, forcing a 3-wide situation where Barrett fenced the leader. That allowed me to slip by and take the lead. And using lap traffic to my advantage, I actually put about 3.5 seconds on him before taking the win in one of the most blatantly manipulated races in NASCAR history. Now with 12 races remaining in the 2006 season, the quest for the Winston Cup Championship is more or less non-existent. With that, the focus fully shifts to the Rookie of the Year battle. Tony Walker isn't even top 6 in points right now, but through the power of teamwork and aggressive manipulation, anything is possible. Would you believe that with all the success and wins and everything, Goodyear still only has a happiness rating of 59 for being on my car? Unbelievable. And so, we headed back to Darlington for the final crown jewel race of the season, the Southern 500. Ever since we got upgraded enough to stop burning the tires off at the end of the run, it almost feels like the car is literally flying. I've put on a clinic, a lot of races this season, but this one was especially one-sided. I was putting 15 seconds on the field every stint. On lap 37, we had some pit road entry drama. Ricky Craven was headed to pit road, but he had somebody on his inside and he chopped their nose. Unlike me in the spring race, he actually saved it. At a certain point, I got bored of my own dominance and started screwing with Kurt Busch and Jeff Gordon, who were still mad at me after Bristol. I'm beginning to sound like a broken record, but I won this race by a lap, and in fact, I was within 2 seconds of winning by 2 laps. You know, it's 2006. The NASCAR executives almost certainly have Blackberries. I wonder what they've been saying about me in their text chains. And then we were back at Richmond for another guaranteed washout. I went in circles for 30 minutes. My rear tire changer slipped in one of Jeff Gordon's spilt Pepsis, and Terry Labonte chose to help me some more. Basically, things went swimmingly until lap 81. I was attempting to lap Jamie McMurray, and he blocked me all the way down to the apron on the backstretch. Once he got to the corner, he forgot that Jimmy Johnson was outside of him and just slammed him. Somehow those two saved it, but I cut it hard left trying to avoid them and actually just spun myself out. It was pretty embarrassing, but I had such a huge lead that it really didn't matter. For fun, I pitted under caution for 4 tires and fuel, and restarted in second behind Dale Jr. You see, he was lucky enough to pass me as I was spinning, and he got back on the lead lap that way. But for some reason, he didn't pit under the caution. So I put Dale top of 3 into turn 1 by jumping to the inside of Tony Stewart, and with that, I instantly had the lead back. Dale deciding not to pit under the caution doomed his strategy because a few laps later he had to hit pit road for his final stop and lost 2 laps by pitting under green. In a normal race that would have cost him dearly, but he only dropped from 2nd to 3rd, so I guess maybe it's not that big a deal. Anyways, you can add this race to the rather large list of races that I won by over a lap. I think I'm gonna make management come up with a playoff format, aren't I? Speaking of that, there's exactly 10 races left in the season. Thus, we begin the 10-race Nada Chase at New Hampshire. Oh, by the way, this kind of snuck up on me. I have 74 career wins. It's only 2 wins away from tying the late great Dale Earnhardt. Tony Walker showed up to New Hampshire, and unfortunately there's like no way to help someone here, so the best I could do is wish him good luck again. But check out what he did on lap 58. Coming into turn 3, he just flat punted Casey Mears out of the way for some reason. He has learned quite well. Also, shout out to Dale Jarrett for getting between me and Jeff Gordon. I feel like he probably prevented a caution. Just like the summer race here, I employed my 25-lap stint strategy and the AI cars ran way too long again, with Ryan Newman relinquishing the lead to pit on lap 61, 11 laps after I had made my last pit stop. Because of my strategy, I took home my 75th career win by a full 20 seconds. And that win has put me right in position to tie Dale Earnhardt at the world-famous Dover night race. By the way, Tony Walker finished in 34th spot, so he's still got a lot of work to do in the rookie standings. At Dover, just take a look how fast my car took off on the start. That moment there kind of set the pace for the whole race, to be honest. Jeff Gordon blew up on lap 6, and on lap 24 I was trying to put a lap on Kevin Grubb but misjudged it, got into him and pulled off quite possibly the greatest save of my career, drifting it all the way through 1 and 2. I continued ridiculously extending my lead from there, and I once again put the whole field a lap down. Through the monotony, I claimed my 76th career NASCAR Winston Cup Series victory, officially tying Dale Earnhardt. We didn't have a flag prepared like when Jeff Gordon tied him, so I improvised and drew the number 3 on the track in burnt rubber as a tribute. And how fitting. The next race is the EA Sports 500 at Talladega. Once again, plate racing, so I shot out from the field and led the first lap for the 5 points that I really don't need, and then tucked in behind Mark Martin. I rode behind him for a few laps before I did the same stupid thing I did in the Pepsi 400 and lost his draft. I fell back into the pack, accidentally slapped Dale Jr., and cut in line behind Kevin Harvick to draft my way back up to Mark Martin. Once we caught the 6 car, I swapped back to helping Mark, and it was like nothing ever happened. When I say I was committed to Mark Martin's back bumper, I mean it. We were able to tandem draft all the way out to lap 28 before we finally got separated by the second pit cycle. Because I had lost my wingman, I switched back to island hopping with assorted lap cars. You know, I almost started the big one by doing that. Mayfield blew up in the tri-oval while I was trying to hook up with Ricky Craven, so when Craven checked up for him, I right-reared him into the wall. Somehow he saved it, and fortunately that little moment did not derail my strategy. I made my final stop on lap 42, took right sides only, and cycled out in second behind Mark Martin, who had yet to come down pit road. I suppose he was hoping for another classic LePaging caution, which would have ended the race under yellow. Unfortunately for him, he wasn't that lucky. He had to pit at the end of lap 44, and with that, I cycled back into the lead. I then rode around for the next 3 laps in complete solitude and picked up my 77th career win. This was a caution-free race that I won by 33 seconds. I have fundamentally ruined Talladega racing in this timeline. Then it was time for Kansas. On the opening lap, I ran side by side with Penske's Lone Ranger Ryan Newman through turns 1 and 2, got him cleared down the back, and just set sail. This field got really strung out. Like at the halfway point, it was a near even distribution of cars. I will say though that it's kind of a problem when staring at the track map is more interesting than watching what's happening on track, because this was yet another race, or kind of just one. You know, this late in the season, Tony Walker was starting to make me pretty nervous. His team, which is actually listed in-game as Petty Enterprises, really hasn't been attempting enough races to make up points. He's still back in 7th. Anyways, it was time to head back to Charlotte for the UAW GM Quality 500. Charlotte is a track that I just love making laps at, and that's fortunate because this race was just 83 qualifying laps with some lap cars sprinkled in. I really wish this game had a stat that tracked attendance data, because I'd probably got the numbers down at least 50% from when the season started. I think somehow less happened in this race than at Kansas, which is really just astonishing. Anyways, it was time to go back to my little madhouse, Martinsville. I knew I had to barrel at least someone this season to be even slightly comfortable with myself. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's even part of my sponsorship contracts. So right as we took the green, I looked up in my rear view and saw, once again, Jeff Gordon. In that moment, he involuntarily volunteered. Trying to get myself into position, I plowed the wall off turn 2, slammed Jeff to drag him back to me, and into turn 3 he pretty much just accepted his fate. Let me say this, I didn't think it would be too serious. Thought maybe he'd just hit the barrels, drop back to last, we'd all have a good laugh. Instead, he exploded and collected like 10 or 15 other cars. To atone for my sins, I decided to pit under the caution and restarted in 40th. Working your way through traffic here is an experience. It's almost a 50-50 of awesome and infuriating. On lap 21, I got by Jamie McMurray to take 11th, and 2 laps later, his hood fell off, bringing out the caution. In the race back to the line, I got by Dale Jarrett to take 10th, but that really didn't matter because I took the liberty of pitting again. My jack man did his absolute best banana peel slip, and I restarted in 32nd. We made it exactly 1 lap before Kenny Wallace brought out another debris caution. I chose not to pit this time, shocking, I know. From there, I got back to my usual aggressive traffic management strategy, and in no time, found myself back in the top 10. At this point in the run, my tire advantage was really starting to show up, and I started just blowing by people on corner exit especially. I got by Dale Jr. at the end of lap 40 to take 2nd, and the moment I did that, we had another debris caution because something fell off of Jimmy Johnson's car. This time, though, the whole field pitted, and I got off in 2nd behind Dale Earnhardt Jr. Somehow, Tony Stewart came into the pits as the leader and left outside the top 10. I've got no idea what happened to him. Right as we took the green, I cut in between 2 of my lap car friends, Ron Hornaday and David Green, so I could get to the bottom before anybody else. And through 3 and 4, Hornaday made contact with Dale Jr., allowing me to sneak by and finally take the lead back. Once we got back into the lap cars, we had another caution for debris, and of course, I pitted under this caution. Got 2 reasons for it. 1, I like having a tire advantage. And 2, I want to be able to run long, just in case Christian Fittipaldi does the funny again. I restarted in 36th, and was right back on offense. I've got pretty good at coming back through the field at this point, and within 6 laps, I was back to battling in the top 10. Slowly but surely, I was starting to close in on race leader Dale Earnhardt Jr. Thanks to lap traffic, I eventually reeled in and passed Kurt Busch for 2nd, and a little later, Dale Jr. got hung up behind Casey Mears, and I put the move on him coming off turn 2 to take the lead back. On lap 81, I saw Fittipaldi coming down pit road, and I was pretty confident we'd have a caution in the next 2 laps. Don't ask me how, but he exited pit road successfully. Only took him 4 years to figure out how. I still ran the stint long just to make sure that nothing stupid would happen, and we almost had something, because I'm pretty sure Ward Burton figured out how to teleport, but since it didn't cause a caution, I didn't question it. I hit pit road for the final time on lap 92, and unsurprisingly cycled out with the lead. I guess at this point in the race, everyone who could have lost debris already did, because suddenly this race became really calm. And after one more classic lap car moment, I closed out the win above Dale Jr. by 4.5 seconds. Then it was time to go back to Atlanta, and Tony Walker actually showed up. So it was time for me to initiate the plan. I had to run as hard as possible, catch up to the tail end of the field, pick up Tony, and immediately begin share drafting with him. Somehow, this plan worked so well that I was actually able to still put time over second while doing it. I almost wrecked it, trying to help Tony Walker pass Russell Richardson, and once I caught back up to him, we passed another 3 cars before coming down pit road together. I had a pit stop time of 15.2 seconds, and Walker still beat me out of the pits. Equally remarkable as it was convenient, because we got right back to tandem racing. Just like New Hampshire, we ganged up on Casey Mears again, and then we passed Robbie Gordon and Kenny Wallace before Walker made his final pit stop. Since he short-pitted, I finally had the opportunity to run hard again. I put a couple more seconds on Tony Stewart before making my last stop on lap 54. Once everybody cycled through, I easily took the lead again, and with 9 laps to go, I caught back up to Walker. He was pretty obviously starting to bleed spots badly because he had short-pitted, so I hooked back up with him so he could at least maintain his track position. Eventually, I decided that Tony's car is not fast enough to pass anyone, so I have to drag the field back to him using total team control manipulation. Casey Mears got up into the wall on the front stretch, and that allowed me to put rookie contender Kyle McCoy into the fence. Through 1 and 2, I practically stopped up in front of him to let Tony Walker get through. Although I found out later that this was 100% pointless because McCoy was actually running a lap behind Walker. All doing that did was just earn me a bonus rival. After those shenanigans, I caught back up to Walker and drafted with him all the way to the checkered flag. I won this race by 23 seconds, but the most important stat is that Tony Walker finished in 27th, catapulting him all the way to the top of the rookie leaderboard. The next race was at Phoenix. Tony Walker wasn't in this race, but I definitely did play some games with the rookie contenders who did choose to show up. The one I messed with the most was Barry Baker. He was running suspiciously well, and I had to intervene. I may have stepped over the line a little bit, but hey, got the job done. But just like all the other flat tracks this season, my car was absolutely awesome here. Late in the race, I saw Tony Stewart right up in front of me, and I realized I had a chance of winning this race by a whole lap. So, with 3 laps to go, I dove into turn 3 but overcooked it, and got up into Tony. We got stuck together, and I carried us both into the outside wall, and I spun it out, bringing out the caution flag. I was pretty sure at that time that I'd actually thrown the race away by wrecking, but the pace car picked me up as the leader, so I still won. My totally ethical manipulation strategy made Barry Baker finish in 34th, which really should help Walker's chances. Then we headed back to Rockingham for the penultimate race of the season. Rookie contender Clay Dixon showed up for this one. Now, he's been terrible in every single race he's run. He's ran a lot of them, and that makes him dangerous in the rookie points battle. I once again had lights out pace. I mean, that's just kind of become a standard. And I really didn't have to mess with the rookie contenders all that much because they were running so badly that I couldn't make their days any worse. Clay Dixon was literally running in last. Not much happened here, to be honest. I kept my nose clean for the rest of the race and easily picked up career win number 83, which gets me tied with both Cale Yarborough and the real timeline Jimmy Johnson on the all-time wins list. Coming into the final race of the 2006 Winston Cup Series season at Homestead, the Drivers' Championship is not worth discussing. But in the rookie battle, Clay Dixon has taken over the points lead. How, you may ask? He has started 7 races this year. Compare that to Tony Walker's 4. But Petty Enterprises rose to the occasion, and they actually entered Walker in the race at Homestead. But he's got some pretty stiff competition in both Barry Baker, who absolutely hates me, and Greg Hicks. Because I didn't want to even have to think about points, my strategy here was pretty easy to get behind. I just needed to make sure that Tony Walker was the highest finishing rookie. If he pulls that off, he wins the rookie honors. Oh, and yeah, I won the pole here as well, which means I've put together a perfect season in qualifying. Pretty sure Budweiser's tired of giving me weekly money. To update you on the rookie drivers, Barry Baker qualified in 10th position, really putting the pressure on. Tony Walker rolls off in 26th, and Greg Hicks will start all the way back in 37th.
The 121 car has made some new friends and enemies on the racetrack today.
I wonder if he has some reason for that or if it's just a lack of concentration.
Trust me, I have my reasons. The first stint got off to a very, very familiar start. I got clear of Dale Earnhardt Jr. off turn 2 and just left the field behind. I checked the scoring on lap 11, and Tony Walker had already fallen to 42nd That was really concerning. This is very much unrelated, but unfortunately on lap 19, Dale Jarrett lost an engine. That's one less ally in the field. But now back on Walker. I couldn't catch him before I made my first pit stop, so already our odds of being able to work together were diminishing. Tony ran long, so after I pitted, I had the chance to share draft with him for exactly one lap before he had to come to pit road, and we were completely separated for the second stint. Also, I want to give another shout out to Terry Labonte for just being really good to race with. Absolutely maximum courtesy on the track. On lap 35, I almost wrecked with Tony Stewart again, and in the same exact way. This time though, we both kept it off the wall. Stewart was a little bit upset afterwards, but I had way too many things to think about at that time to concern myself with him. I built up a 24-second advantage on Matt Kenseth before making my second pit stop on lap 44, and when I rejoined the track, I started charging my way back through the field, getting around the guys who were running long. After I got up to 6th, I got curious and checked the scoring. Tony Walker was running the stint out long again, probably praying for a caution, but both Baker and Hicks had already made their final stops, and they were currently a lap behind Walker. Just a few laps later, I rather conveniently ran up on both Walker and Baker, and I instantly had an idea. I've spent a long time in this career mode racing drivers who really don't like me, so I know what they're like. Tony Walker needs a caution, so I'll just see if Baker would rather wreck me for what happened at Phoenix or keep his cool and stay in contention for the Rookie of the Year honors. The choice was his. I made the move down the backstretch to get side by side with him, and he chose to door slam me, causing me to spin down onto the turn 3 apron and handing Tony Walker the caution he needed. Everything about this strategy was genius, except for one slight problem. I wasn't done wrecking. I slid back up the track and collected Ryan Newman. Jeff Gordon caught my fall again and was very angry about it. At that point, I should have just stopped up by the wall, but I stepped on it and got rammed by Ron Hornaday, getting up on my side, nearly blowing the fuel cell, and after that, I finally got it off the racetrack and just took the caution. Now that I've fixed Tony Walker's race, I had to worry about myself again. I pitted under the caution to get at least some of the damage repaired, and as a bonus, I had fresh tires for the restart. And hey, this car wasn't any worse than the one I used to flip and win at Michigan, so I was still confident in it. I restarted in 17th with 11 laps to go, ready for the restart of my life. And this car was still fast, even with all the damage. I hit 206 down the backstretch, and was already up into 10th after just one lap. I threw it down to turn 1, bounced off McMurray, and thanks to guys like Tony Walker checking up the whole field, I was in 4th. I sent it down to turn 3 so low that I actually clipped the grass and was in 2nd by the time we hit the front stretch. The only thing keeping me out of the lead was, of course, a really angry Jeff Gordon. Coming off turn 2, the caution flag flew, and I wasn't going to take any chance this race ended under yellow without me leading it. So I share drafted Jeff down the back, and he started blocking me down to the apron. After everything we've been through, I wasn't going to back down now. I went onto the apron at 204 miles an hour, doored Jeff up the track, drifted it into turn 3, and cleared him, allowing me to lead the field back to the caution. By the way, the cause of the caution was debris off the 2-car of Hornaday. This race very much did not end under caution, and we went back green with 5 laps to go, and I had to run away from Jeff as fast as I could. Fortunately, Sterling Marlin got to his inside through turns 1 and 2 and took 2nd spot away, giving me a bit of a buffer. Honestly, I think the car handled better after almost flipping it. In a way, I guess that makes some sense. I mean, look at how far up in the air that rear spoiler was. After 1 lap back under green, I had a half-second lead, and it was lights out from there. I think my tire advantage really kicked in at that point, and Sterling just kept getting smaller and smaller in my rearview mirror. And in the end, after 36 races, 71 hours of gameplay, a rekindled Jeff Gordon rivalry, and countless many instances of race manipulation, I headed off turn 4 to claim my 84th career win, and along with it, my 2nd NASCAR Winston Cup Series championship. Meanwhile, my protege Tony Walker came across the stripe in 34th, taking home a historic 2nd consecutive Rookie of the Year award. Now, I'm just going to go out on a limb. I don't think that feat's ever going to be repeated. 84 career wins has me tied with Darrell Waltrip on the all-time wins list, and that puts our bootleg Wood Brothers team just 13 races away from tying the real Wood Brothers at this point in NASCAR history. This season was truly unlike any other. I mean, it was actually a statistically perfect season. But above all else, it came down to me and Jeff Gordon battling door to door one more time. I wouldn't have it any other way. Our team is now sitting on $190 million. I really don't know what I'm supposed to do with all that now. Let's take a look at the postseason stats. I won the championship by a tiny, microscopic margin. 1,063 points was the difference between me and Dale Earnhardt Jr. There's not too much to say about my stats because it all reads either 36 or 1.0, but looking down the point standings, Ryan Newman brings it home 4th in points. I kind of thought Penske downsizing after Rusty Wallace's retirement would hurt them, but clearly they're doing just fine. Farther down the list, we have Dale Jarrett finishing a very strong 6th in points. Jeff Gordon just 1 spot behind him. And keep in mind, this is 2006, and Sterling Marlin finished 9th in points. That's really good. And by the way, the new hire at the Wood Brothers, Kevin Grubb, ain't working out too well. He finished 31st. All the way back in 41st, we find Tony Walker. He only ran 5 races, but he scored 353 points, enough to win the Rookie of the Year honors by 40 points above Clay Dixon. Look at this. There were 35 rookie contenders this season. Insane. Also, you know I like to go fast. I again set the fastest trap speed. This time it was 221.944 miles an hour for a 3,600-pound race car. That is fast. When it comes to driver respect, I end the season with Jeff Gordon hating me the most, just as God intended. I won every pole award, so they're probably going to have to amend the Bud Shootout eligibility rules for next year. Ford destroyed everyone in the Manufacturers' Championship, and the lap champion results are just a little bit one-sided. Almost all of my sponsors love me. I still can't satisfy Goodyear. I gave them a perfect season. What could they possibly want? Huge shout out though to Coca-Cola. They've blown so much money on this stupid team's antics. And now, for the big reveal. Let's see who's retiring after the 2006 season. The first one is 2-time champion Terry Labonte, the only Hendrick Motorsports driver I could actually trust. And your second driver to retire is Dale Jarrett. Why is it all the drivers I actually get along with? Check out his replacement, Ashton Lewis. Grinded it out for so many years with the family team, now he's got a shot in a championship-winning car. Curious to see how he'll do in 2007. Speaking of 07, considering how badly I must have hurt the ratings by pulling off a perfect season, I am certain there's discussions going on right now about different formats, eliminations, segmented racing, and all sorts of other things. I mean, there's even rumors right now about a spec car being an option. One thing I do know for sure is that Budweiser's probably going to ban me from qualifying. You know, they got to make things interesting somehow. But with that, we conclude the 2006 NASCAR Still Somehow Winston Cup Series season. I really hope you enjoyed the return of Phlip Withem. It's been a ton of fun being able to revisit this series. There's a few more things that Phlip needs to do before he can hang up his helmet in good conscience. First of all, I clearly don't have 8 championships or 201 wins, so there's some room for improvement there. And remember, career mode in this game lasts 20 seasons. There's a part of me that actually wants to see what happens at the end. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, but still, there's plenty left to accomplish in Phlip's career. And so with that, I'd like to take a moment and thank all of my channel supporters for everything you do for the channel. I mean it when I say that you really make this show work, and I can't thank you enough. I've already got the next video 100% recorded. I'll be reviewing both the Xbox Series X and PC versions of NASCAR 25. Should make for a pretty fun video. I can tell you already from what I've played of the game, I like it. Anyways, I really hope you enjoyed today's video, and as always, I'll see you next time.